I ran across this pattern doing a search for bluegill patterns. And I did use, of all things, I did use the Fly Fishers International video library on the Facebook, on the FFI page. If you ever go to our website, go to the tying under education tab. There is a video library. I put in bluegill, warm water. This fly came straight up. Saw the video on it, and it was this fly was designed by Clark Pierce of Fly Fish Food. He also does the Uncle Cheech Facebook page that I post a lot of videos and stills also to try to pull people into coming to the fly tying group and see what we're about, which has worked. So he has a video on this. If you just type in Foam Dragon Bluegill Slayer, boom, it comes straight up. When I started tying this, I've tied it in tan, olive, black, and put the white for the third piece of foam so that you could see it on the water. I could not believe the reaction from fish any time of year, almost any time of day. I didn't try it in the winter yet, but spring, summer, it's just, and fall, I've even got a chance to do no, I haven't done it in the fall, but spring and summer, oh my God, I have never seen fish go out of their way like bullets to attack this. It floats well. A question was said, how do I, when you start using craft foam, how does it, craft foam sometimes absorbs water. And I'm not going to lie, it does. I've had that issue. I squeezed it out and threw it back out and dusted it with frog fanny that worked, or any of that stuff, that silicate that you get when you get your packages, and take the water right out. I've tied these from starting in sizes 8 all the way down to 212. Materials, a 2X long Nymph hook. And the model that I'm using is a Daiichi 1710. For this, since I'm using tan, I'm using a tan thread. 6/0 seems to work for me. And I'm going to say, as long as you know your thread tension, there's no issues on using 6/0 or even 8/0. They've even gotten into denier, and you know what? I'm getting to the point where I'm getting totally confused with all these numbers. I'm going to stick with 6/0. You can always see on your thread that it has a. Let me pull one off. Like this is an older one. This is back when Uni-Thread actually was made in Canada. Now it's made in Germany. But so 6/0 will work. The tail, I usually match it to the body and the foam. So this is a tan with tan body. Tan dubbing, it doesn't matter what kind of dubbing you use. I've used iridescent dubbing, UV dubbing, just wool dubbing. It's your preference. There are times I will lean towards a UV dubbing. It seems to get the fish's attention, no matter what is out there. The overbody is 3 layers of 2 millimeter foam, whether it be craft, rainy foam. Seems like it's an Eversoft foam or Ever something foam. I can't remember the name, but it floats better. So if you want to pay a little extra, it's fine. It'll work. The Sili legs, just rubber legs, will work just as fine. And the ones I'm using are barred pumpkin. So that's that pattern. So with that, I'm going to unmute everybody, and I'm going to say, where is it? I'm going to ask if anybody has questions at this point before I start. Speak up.
Jerry, the foam that you were talking about, it's Evazote.
That's it. Thank you.
You bet.
I saw the name, can never remember it. I'm just like saying Ramey's foam, and thank you. I appreciate that.
Jerry?
Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Do you do it in any other color?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just curious.
No, that's a question. I have tied them in olive. I have tied them in black. Haven't tried red yet, but those are the three primary colors that I've been using.
Okay.
All right.
I find I get a lot of hits on yellow. That's why I was asking.
I don't see why not. In fact, next week's fly is the foam humpy, and I tie that in yellow, and that's a magnet also. You know, just a high visibility, you're able to see it. But I think if you think about it, the way that the fly is cut with those V's in it and that foam almost looks like a dragonfly nymph. I have fished this with split shot on the leader to sink it intentionally and have it float off the bottom, and it would give a, you know, motion, and that works great. And we all know that dragonfly nymphs are like jets underwater, so it's a good thing to know. All right, I'm going to switch cameras now and start the tying if there are no more questions. Everybody good? Here we go. All right, so it's a 2X long hook, everybody, and gotta get my glasses on. All right, first thing, doesn't really matter where we put the thread on, but let's keep standards where standards are. Always start right behind the eye of the hook, about an eye length back. As you see, I lift the thread up so that every time I wrap, it'll slide down. Now I'll cut the tag off. And I'll run my thread from the front to the back to the bend of the hook. Stopping, I'm going to stop here, explain what's going on. The thread now lines up with the bend of the hook. The thread is at the bend of the hook, and the barb lines up to where the bend is. So right there is the bend of the hook. I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to move to the mid-shank area. And I'm going to stop right there and ask if anybody has any questions. One question was, and when I get to the foam, do I use a foam cutter or a pattern? And I'm going to tell you that I just cut a strip, and that's not the next step, but I'll get to that, all right? Now, if you're in speaker view, you'll see my complete hook is covered with thread, okay? That is to help
hold the foam.
It's gonna do more than that. It'll help us make sure that all the materials don't slide off the other, slide around the hook. So think of it as putting sand down on ice, okay? My next step, I'm gonna tie in the tail. I'm gonna take some Marabou. I'm going to just pull it all together, get all the tips lined up. I'm going to measure to the shank of the hook. The tail is only as long as the shank of the hook, okay? Now, with my right hand, I'm going to move that to the bend. My left hand is going to come and hold the tail in place. And I'm going to move my left hand to where my right hand is for the tying point. And then I'm going to use the pinch method, putting the thread between the thumb and index finger and let it slide down. I'm going to do this 3 or 4 times. Just get that out of the way. Do not pull. Just take your scissor and trim it, cut it. And then I'm going to run the thread to the bend of the hook to where the tail is. I don't want this other, I didn't cut it close enough, but there I go. And I'm going to run my thread back up to make sure that all the fibers are locked into place. So there's the tail. Going to bring my thread to the bend of the hook, and then we're going to start dubbing the body. Now I'm using a tannish colored dubbing. You know, there's whatever color you want. Tan, since this one is all tan, I'm going to use a tan. The material I'm using is from a local person around in the Pennsylvania area that is putting out a product called electric wool. I've used iridescent stuff. I've used regular fox fur in the tan color. But the object is I'm just going to twist it on in one direction and slide it up. Making a noodle. Between my thumb and index finger, I twist in one direction, and since I didn't use wax, I can move it up. So at that point, I'm going to start dubbing the body. Starting at the bend, and I'm going to try to increase the thickness. Don't go too wild on this, but I'm going to increase the thickness as I get to the mid-shank point. I only want to dub a body for mid-shank, half the shank of the hook. It's too thick. Okay. You have anything you want to, write down a question, go right ahead. And by the way, this is a size 8 hook that I'm going to use tomorrow if the river isn't that high up after today's major storm that just went through. I'm almost there. Okay, so that's half the shank of the hook. Any questions so far?
Maybe Jerry.
We're good? Go ahead, Jerry.
Can you use, I'm going to say now, I totally forgot. Could you use like chenille or istas or something like that, or a sparkle chenille for the body?
All right. Well, If your intention is to get the fly to sink, I don't see why you wouldn't use chenille, because that's a really super water absorber. That's up to you. This is your preference. I mean, the object is, I think when Clark Pierce designed this, it was strictly doing it for floating, even though I've used it for both sinking it and floating it. We kind of want to take into consideration the materials that we use, whether to float them or sink them. So something that you have to take into consideration. I'm using, it's a wool, and this probably will sink it a bit, but with 3 layers of foam, it's going to offset that. So it's part of trying to figure out your design on what you want to do with the pattern. All right. Does that help, Jerry?
Yeah, just curious. That's all. Okay.
Oh, it's one of the things I've learned is you take the pattern, try to figure out what you're going to use it for, how you want to use it, and try to offset the materials to whether it's a floating fly or a sinking fly or a mid current fly. That's all. All right.
What do you usually use it for? I noticed you in the fly fishing FFI article. You said you usually do you sink it or float it more often?
Depending on the weather. This hot. If I'm going for panfish, I'm going to keep the thing floating. Even the bass will come up. If I don't get any risers coming up for it, I'll put some split shot ahead of it. Or another thing is if I'm in a lake, I'll run a sinking line and have it a short leader so that it will float like this. You know, it's basically, I'm going to try to use it as a dragonfly nymph also. All right. You know, you got to make a decision on which way you want to go. That answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Angela asked me if, what about peacock curl instead of dubbing? Why not? It's perfect. I find peacock curl as an attractor for a lot of flies. It gives a nice metallic and iridescent look. Use it on foam beetles, the peacock curl. Okay? All right, we're going to get ready to do the next step, which is the foam part. Everybody okay so far? I'm going to put this up there. Everybody's asking whether I'm using foam cutters. This is something Larvalace came up with. It's just a cutting board with a piece of plastic guide to cut the foam on. I use that with an X-Acto knife. I also use a paper cutter. Then you guys were asking about, you know, like jigs or anything that were already foam cutters. And for other flies, such as the crease fly, I have a cutter for that. One of the patterns that I like to use with foam is, this one isn't tied 100% the way I like it, but is a bomber, is a stealth bomber. And that has a cutter also. So those are no, other types of tools that use cutters. And you can get these cutters from many places. I go directly to River. If you want to know the exact name, you can email me. But it's a River Country or River something.
River Road Creations.
You got it. They have cutters for everything. Okay. So with that said, these are a strip. I just cut a strip When I cut the strip, I measure it to the gap of the hook. That thickness is the gap of the hook. I will take this strip and I will cut a notch in it. Okay, there's my V. All right. I will line that V up to where the tail is, right there, holding it in place, cupping the body, and I'll bring it up and lock it into place. And if it twists, just twist it back. So now the body is there, laying on top of it. But that's gonna twist on me while fishing. So I'll lift a little bit of it up. A little more than I wanted to put on there. But I'll put a little Loctite or crazy glue, hold it in place. This is that Loctite super glue, locks it right into place. I find that this stuff works great with foam. I like to use it when I'm building many other type of foam patterns. So now that's locked into place. Now I'm going to run my thread up. I'm going to build like a little notch in here because that's where the legs are going to go. And I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to get ready to form the head. So I'm going to tie the thread right in front to hold that up. Any questions? Okay, the next step. Does anybody need more time? Because I could see some people starting to add the Loctite to it. Oh, why isn't this? Okay. Yeah, River Road Creations. Peter asked, what's the name of that cutter supply company? River Road Creations. They also, I did see that they were selling them through Jay Stockard fly fishing company. I don't know if he still has them because every time I've gone on there, he's always said waiting, like you had to wait for it to be done for him to get them. But I've gone directly through River Road Creations. He's a company in Montana. Take care, Dave. All right, so now I'm going to dub the head part of it. Now the head you want to have a little bigger, thicker. So let me just get the first couple of turns right up against, like a jam knot against that foam. I was breaking my own rules about less is more. And yes, I do wet my fingers. So there's the head. Any questions? And now I'm going to pull the foam over the head, hold it in place, and put a couple of wraps to secure the head into place. And that's what it looks like so far on the top. Now that I have it in this position, I want to show you how you could take your thread, bring it over, and bring it to the notch so that the thread is on the top and will be hidden on the next step of pulling the foam over to get our second layer and securing that right into place.
So I have to ask.
Sure, go ahead. No, you don't ever think that it's bad, Abby. Just ask the question.
So I had to cheat to try to tie with you tonight. I wasn't able to go to the store. So I used the hopper kit.
Yeah.
And cut it in half so it was thinner. And then I realized I can't do that big of a head. So should I leave it like sticking up or should I go ahead and tie it down?
Try tying it down. See what it looks like. Let me see as you're doing it.
I'll try to get closer.
That's fine.
So.
You know, as long as you're getting through the tying. Yeah, that's fine. Don't fret about it. All right. Yeah, it's not. It all comes down to you know where you can buy 2 millimeter foam. You go right over to a craft store like Joann Fabrics. They got every color in the world there. Michaels, if they have them by you. Yeah. It's very. You can get them a lot. I hate to say this, a lot cheaper than some of the fly shops. But, all right, so I got the head. What I do next is I take the scissor and I line it up to where the notch is, hold the foam in place and cut. So now I have the second layer. And I'll cut a little notch there. I'll get that magic Loctite. Just make sure you never get it on your fingers. Just put a little drop, spread it through, and lock it into place. That'll hold that into place. And there's your second layer. Getting to the third layer, probably better if I cut the notch first. And I'll tie that right behind that third notch. So now I have all three. And the reason for the lighter color is so you can see it better on the water. So that is all secured into place. And then trim that off. So now I have all three layers. The third layer is an indicator, a sight indicator. Okay? Gary asked, why are the notches so important? And they're not. They look nice. That's about all I could say. Other than when you look at a dragonfly nymph, their wing cases are notched like that. Or even stonefly nymphs have a notch like that. But I think when when Clark was doing it, he was doing it to have something to look nice. You could just square them off if you'd like. I'm just following his pattern. All right. Now I take 2 of the rubber legs together. There's 2 of them here, as you could see. I make sure that the first batch, when I'm tying near to me, are about as long as from the tie-in point to about where the bend is. I'll hold them in place, and I will secure them at that tie-in point, bringing the loop around, holding it on the side, and lock that into place. Okay. At this point, and Barry, I don't glue the 3rd layer. It's just so short, it's not worth it at that point. As you can see, it'll stick up so that you can even see it better. All right. Now, we could either whip finish this by hand, you always got to make sure that these stay out of your way, or use a whip finishing tool. Just keep sticking them into the triangle so they don't get caught up, and then cut. Then I would take this loop, making sure I don't stretch it. I just make sure they're all the same, and cut the loop, lift all the legs up so I can cut them all out the same, but don't pull, because if you pull and cut, they'll shrink on you. So you just cut them. So now I got all the legs in place. Making sure they wiggle a little bit. Now I'll take some head cement and I'll run it right along the threads. So that when the fish take it, they don't get pulled out. And that is the finished pattern. Any questions?
No, it's a great job.
Okay. Trying to switch to my cam. All right, here we go.
I doctored up a little bit and I put some knots in the back legs just to make it kind of look like there's a joint there. And then I found this very effective for panfish here in the Charleston area.
That's great. That is great. Yeah, as we start tying, we start doing many different things differently. We add techniques that we learned from we've learned from other patterns, and we add them to what we're doing. That's why I find fly tying so rewarding, because we don't have to keep tying the same thing the same way as everybody else. So what size hook would I use for panfish or hoppers? I like that size 8 right there. And when I'm tying, I use that 8. I'll even go to a 3X long hook for hoppers. I love spinning deer hair. So my favorite hopper is a Dave's hopper. If you want to go to a bullet hopper and use the technique that we're going to do on the 4th week with the dragonfly with the extended body, we would I use what is called like a bullet head hopper with an extended body foam for grasshoppers, and I use rubber legs for them too. And yes, Barry, this fly is so easy to tie and so rewarding that we can go use it for panfish and bass. I think our Project Healing Waters vets would love tying this fly. It's a simple pattern. It's big enough, and it's very rewarding when you catch a fish on it. I took my son out and I handed him one of them, and he couldn't believe how fast the bluegills would jump on it and how fast the bass were going for it. So it was like if there was only one fly I needed, that was the fly I needed for the day. So it's great. Any other questions?
Jerry, would you tie it on a larger hook for bass, or just keep it that size 8?
Well, I don't see why not. I've kept it at 8 because that is probably the largest size I have for those hooks that I have right now. Because I started switching over to Daiichi after Mustad decided to change their models. Even though they called them the same numbers or even changed the numbers, that their idea of a 3X long hook for a 967 2, they decided to go to a 4X long hook and say that. And Marcy, yes, this will work for trout. One of the things I stress a lot, I don't tie for a species anymore. I tie to try to imitate something that looks like a natural. And you're probably saying to me, well, where does that look like a natural? It's got a combination of a lot of things. One, that Marabou tail is an extended body at that point. It wiggles in the water. It floats high on the water. It gives the illusion of a hopper also. It gives the illusion of an emerging dragonfly nymph. So what I'm trying to do is trying to trick these fish into thinking this is what they want because this is what's out there for them. So that's been my mantra in tying for a while now, for a long time. I learned that from my friend Tom Logan, who's a wildlife biologist, and he feels that we should not worry about the species we're fishing for, but we should be trying to imitate what they're taking. So, Marcy, sorry for the long explanation, but it'll work. It'll work on trout.
Hey, Jerry, tell me again the name of this.
This is called a Foam Dragon Bluegill Slayer. Has to have a long name. You can thank Clark Pierce for that. But he's always coming up with something different. And, he's a good guy, helping us all out, trying to teach us new patterns and coming up with new patterns. Anybody
hey, Jerry?
else? Yes.
Jerry, Mark from Kansas City.
Yes.
If you like spinning deer hair, do you know Mike George?
Yeah, I know Mike.
Yeah, very good friend of mine. So
tell him I said hi.
I will, yeah.
Him and I got a little difference of opinion on categories. He's trying to get me to put in a straight category just on deer hair spinning on the fly tying challenge that we do once a year. And I refused to do it. I said to him, does it float on top of the water? He goes, yeah. I go, then it's a dry fly. And he goes, well, no, not really. I go, it's a dry fly. And then this year I decided to pull his chain a little bit, and I put an Adams Irresistible as the dry fly for everybody to do. Mm-hmm. So spinning deer hair, it's a dry fly. If you're doing a mudla minnow, it's a streamer. You know, that's my thought. It's just that
Mike is great, but there is one way, and that's Mike's way.
He's learned that it doesn't work with me. I'm a little thick-headed than he is, and I got the title, and he doesn't.
Yeah. Now Mike is a great person, but he's very set awesome in his way of tying.
And he should be.
You know Bob Clauser, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You heard that wonderful story about Bob Clauser?
Yeah.
Where he was tying at the National, and some fellow sat down and said, didn't know who he was, and said, well, what's that guy tying? And he said, well, he's tying a Clauser minnow. The guy said, well, that's not the way you tie a Clauser minnow. And his friend poked him and said, well, that's Bob Clauser. And he said, I don't care. That's not the way you tie a Clauser minnow.
I'm sure
Clauser tells that story on himself. Shh, I'm sorry about the dog.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But that's a great story, though. And I laugh. You know, and I have a story when I was doing a fly tying demonstration, and I was just a young 20-year-old at that time at the Catskill Fly Fishing Center. And, you know, everybody wanted me to come up and tie there so that I could just, you know, show people different techniques. And so I went up there and started tying Adams. So this guy comes up to me and says, wow, that's a great way of tying. That is really beautiful fly. So I took it out of my vise and I handed it to him. Well, here you go. And he goes, oh, thank you very much. A friend of mine hits me on the side and goes, do you know who that is? I go, no. He goes, that's Paul Jorgensen. So here it was, Paul Jorgensen's like taking one of my flies to go. And he goes, he's going to go use it to go fish on the Willow Emac pretty soon.
Yeah.
It's always
a great compliment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun. Gary, enjoy your dinner. I like quick and easy, cheap flies that catch fish. It adds to the fun. Yes, Tom, I agree with you 100%. The ones that are complicated, sometimes I wonder why we tie them. The easy ones are great fish catchers.
Gary, can you see this fly?
Yeah, I love that. I like that.
That's a Mike George.
Of course.
That's a Mike George. Yeah, he gave me that. Notice the double weed guard?
Yeah.
One of his signatures, yeah.
I'd get that framed. I mean, the guy's an artist.
I ain't going to fish it.
No.
I look at it.
That's about it, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we all like, you know, we all like our different things we play with, you know, the little sliders. You know,
that's beautiful, yeah.
But it's a lot of fun. And, you know, I take tying as it's fun to do.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the things was someone said, is it art? And I go, yes, but it's art with functionality. We're tying to catch a fish. It's art because we've excelled ourselves to make it an art form. But the bottom line is it's art with functionality.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have anything to say? All right. If there are no more questions, we'll get ready for next week's fly, which is just a foam humpy, which makes it easier to tie a humpy without having to deal with the elk hair to cover over and make the wing at the same time. But they're very effective flies, panfish and trout, if you want to look at it that way. Smallmouth bass, love them on the Delaware. It's just a lot of fun. And I'm glad that everybody enjoyed it. And I'll see you next week. Okay.